Hey True Seekers, it's Carolyn here, and I'm going to be doing a deck profile for our Breanna Universal deck. So we have Breanna here. She says, before the game begins, separate any 3 cards from your deck and place them beneath this card. Once per turn, you may take one of those cards. Once those cards are gone, this card has no ability. So Breanna is awesome in this deck. She's just really overall useful, but I really like her in the Universal because there are so many different things that you can do, and she's extremely useful for that. So I'm going to toss her up here. Because it is Universal, we obviously are going to be running fasting. So I have 3 of those. Fasting. And we do have a few other colors in the deck just as support cards. So we also run 3 prayer. And then in case we need to see them, we have a Holy Spirit and a hope. So those are extremely useful in certain situations. Also, because Universal, it really doesn't matter what power you're running. So that's very nice. So we're going to actually start off with our story cards here. We're going to begin with the Beautiful Gate. So this card can remove a hindrance card from your active cine. And honestly, this one is only in here because this card exists. And this card, Universal Animo, may not be activated against the cine to whom this card is attached as long as the cine is active, which would completely destroy this deck from the beginning if this was attached to something, because I couldn't activate anything Universal. And that's what this deck is. So this card is in here, so this doesn't have to completely ruin your day. Next, we have, for such a time as this, reveal any number of cines from your hand to your opponent and shuffle them back into your deck. You may draw 2 cards for each cine shuffled back into your deck in this manner. We have Giant Killer. Search your deck for a Mega Cine and reveal it to an opponent. Or if you're facing a Mega Cine, return it to its owner and have them shuffle it back into their deck. Extremely useful. Conversion. You may discard a cine from your hand and search your deck for a Virtuous Animal. We have 2 of the Runaway. Select any Animo from your discard pile and return it to your hand. So these cards are all great. We have this deck is really based around hindrances and cines, so that's why you'll see a lot of these story cards have to deal with cines. So just kind of keeping that in mind. And back to this whole, Holy Spirit and Hope over here, mainly because this card exists. Quillion Ultra, he is a Universal, but he has a specified cost. And his specified cost is 1 Holy Spirit and 1 Hope. And this card says, as long as this card is in your small group, you may remove 1 Universal cost from your other Animo. The idea is to leave him in your small group and attach an equipment to him, but he's also really nice because he is a 2 for 10. Moving on, we have Ninjiana. She is a 2 for 6, or if you have fasting out there, a 1 for 6. We have 3 copies of Bibsy. Bibsy is great. His ability says, when this card is played from your hand into your small group, you may draw 1 card for each Animo in your small group besides this one. So I really like him in this deck because a lot of the things that draw stuff are based on typing. This one doesn't matter. Then we have 3 copies of Mercifier here, and this card can be swapped for something a level 1 in your deck with a virtue point of 7 or less. So I really like him. He's also just a 1 if you have fasting out there, 1 for 7. Next, as in any group that you're running Universal in, you should be running Prayer Group. We have 3 of them. This card can be activated using up to 6 of any power, and when it's activated, this card is worth 3 virtue points for each power used to activate it. Then we have Alpha Lux. So we have our level 1, level 2, and level 3 here. I originally ran the 3. I prefer running the 2 sets because we've just got so much going on and we can recycle some of these cards. So I really like having this in there. He is a 3 for 15, or if you have fasting out there, he's a 2 for 15. He's big and I like running him.
And Alpha Lux makes him a 1 for 15 if you have fasting and Alpha Lux Ultra.
You mean Aquilion?
Yeah, Aquilion, not Alpha Lux Ultra, Aquilion Ultra.
That one, yes.
Yeah.
That thing. Moving on, we have 3 copies of Floraline. And mainly because we intend to grow that flora line. So we have one universal flora line, which as long as this card is in your small group, there's no limit to the number of power cards you can play from your hand. But more specifically, since this is kind of a Cine-centric deck, we have the Holy Spirit flora line, which is if you're facing a Cine, this card has no activation cost. So we run 2 of that guy. Really like that. And then moving on, we have 2 Hoofits, so we want to recycle those Alpha Lux into the deck. And then we have 2 Hightail, because we really want to see a lot of cards as much as we can, especially early game. And then we have a Potpourri, again, because Cine-centric deck. We want to make sure the actions of our Cines are not affecting us. And then our other 2 Ultra Spots are taken up by Flow. This card, the intent is never to activate it, but if we need to, we always have that prayer out there. But specifically to get us set up to run that Alpha Lux and that prayer group, kind of at the same time with that Aquilion in there. And this is a Hindrance deck, but we definitely need to see those equipment cards too. So we have 2 Pulse Chains, and this allows us to, especially if you put that on this Aquilion, just leave it sitting out there. This card is going to get you those level 1s that you really need to see. And moving on here, we have our Hindrance cards. So we run a Pulse Thorn. As long as this is attached to a Cine, excluding Mega, every Virtuous Animo that's played against the Cine has a Virtue score reduced by 2 points. We have a Blindfold. This card may only be attached to a Cine with an ability. As long as this card is attached, the ability of the Cine can no longer be used, but instead the Cine gains +7 defense. And we run 2 Millstone. Millstone says, so it can only be attached to a Cine with an ability, and this card's ability nullifies that Cine's normal ability. The player facing this Cine to whom this card is attached may only activate 1 Animo per turn while the Cine is active. So that is the whole idea of the game, is to get these guys out there. Specifically this guy, because he completely slows the roll of your opponent. And since we're talking about them, we're going to talk about the Cines that we're attaching these guys to. First, we have Lurakai. I really like this card. I originally didn't because he was small, but I really like using him because during your setup phase, the Cine can be played directly from your discard pile. And so I like having him out there. You can be just like, oh, I have more Cines. I'm just going to discard him and just leave him there until this one turn when I'm like, I really need to see a Cine. Oh, wait. And then you just kind of shove it on your opponent. And the other really cool thing about Lurakai is that you can discard him to use your story card conversion and get that draw power and everything, but he's still in your discard pile, so you can still use his ability. And you can use this Hindrance card because this nullifies the normal ability. Well, you've already used the ability to play him from your discard pile. So this is a really good target for that as well. Next, we have Venomoth. Venomoth is just great. I like him anyway. As long as this card is active, your opponent's Animo may not be activated in the same turn that they're added to or grown in their small group. This isn't one that you would want to play your Millstone for, but I just like having him out there. He's really nice. Next, we have Wolf. Again, if this card is in your hand, you may choose to show it to your opponent, shuffle it back into your deck, and draw another card. So once you've done that and you see him again, you can always add one of those Hindrance cards to it because that ability isn't affecting your opponent necessarily. Next, we have Brandish. As long as this card is active, each time your opponent adds a power card from their hand to their power pool, they have to discard the top card of their deck. He's really rude on his own. Excuse me. But having one of those Hindrance cards on him is also extremely nice. Next, we have Batapole. As long as the Cine is active, your opponent must discard the top 2 cards of their deck in order to use their Truth Seeker's ability. So this is really nice, especially for those Truth Seekers that don't necessarily seem to do a lot. But having him out there on like the end turn or something could really help you if you're facing, say, Ellie or Calvin. He's really good for those decks. Next, we have Toll Crow. As long as this card is active, your opponent may not use any special power cards from their power pool to activate Animo. So I really like Toll Crow. I love his artwork. I've liked him from the beginning. And getting like rid of those special power cards, especially in a deck like this one, would really hurt. You know, especially if you're running those fasting, if you're running those prayer, that's really, really gonna wipe out what you can do. And he is also the first 12 defense Cine. So that's one of the reasons he's in the deck as well. So next we have our megas. We have Venomouse Mega. So your opponent may not activate any level 1 Animo on their next turn. He's big, he's bad, he's just evil, and I like him. But he's not evil. Then we have Lurakai Mega. Select one Animo from your opponent's small group and flip it over. As long as the Cine is active, that Animo may not be interacted with in any way. He is extremely rude and I love it. And then finally, our last Mega is Plantrap Mega. He is big, but he does not have an ability or an action. He is simply a 16, which it's just big. And honestly, most people are not running his weakness either, so he's really nice to have out there. All in all, this deck works really well for what it does, and I look forward to playing with it again more in the future. But that is our Breanna Universal deck profile. In the meantime, Truth Seekers, keep learning virtues and defeating Cines.